it's pretty clear that you want an election. So when are you going to make it happen? When are you going to call a no-confidence vote in the Prime Minister?
Parliament goes back in September, and I think it's at that point we'll look at the situation there. But it's also up to the Prime Minister what he decides to do as well. Because if he's trying to take us out on a no-deal Brexit at the end of October, we will oppose that.
So can you guarantee that you'll call a confidence motion before we leave the EU in October?
I can guarantee you this. We will do everything to prevent a no-deal exit, and we'll do everything to challenge this government, and we'll do it at a time of our choosing.
OK. So when do you think the election's going to be then?
Well, an election takes about 7 weeks from the point at which Parliament votes to hold it under the Fixed Term Parliament Act, and 2/3 of all MPs have to vote for it. But if the government puts down such a motion, we would support it because we think the public do deserve an election. We have a government that doesn't really have a majority, that has a deal made with the DUP some years ago, and cannot win votes in Parliament. Theresa May was defeated more times than any other Prime Minister by the biggest majorities ever. And Johnson has put together a cabinet of ideologically extremely right-wing people, and the leader of the House, instead of getting on with reforming Parliament, seems more concerned about apostrophes at the end of letters.
Okay. Now, let's talk about Brexit, shall we? Because when that election comes, Brexit will be of utmost importance to many people, including people here in Mansfield, which voted 70% to leave the EU. They're going to want to know what your policy is on Brexit. So what is it? Are you now supporting a second referendum in all circumstances?
What we're saying is, no deal we'd oppose, and we would think that people should have a final choice on it. And they could have a vote then between Remain or whatever option Boris Johnson decides to put to them at that time. What I'd also say to Mansfield and to everywhere else is, you've not had the investment you should have had. British governments have walked by on the other side and not invested in good quality jobs since the end of the coal industry. But you also need a government that's going to invest in the future to reduce those inequalities. It's a Labour government that will invest in the future. And we need to maintain a trading relationship with Europe, a trading relationship for our manufacturing industry and for our food processing and food industries as well. Also, issues like medicine supply. And of course, the Northern Ireland border is a key issue. And any deal that damages the Belfast Agreement, which is an international treaty, is simply not going to work.
OK, I just want to bring you back to my question. Mm-hmm. Does Labour now back a second referendum in all circumstances?
What we'd say is there will be a second referendum to make a choice between whatever deal is arranged and what the public want.
Including a Labour deal if you are in power?
Well, if we're in power, yes, of course, the same thing would apply, because I want to make sure that we get to the end of this process where we have a fixed position in this country. I have spent the last 2 years trying to ensure that we put forward the Labour view, which was a customs union with the European Union, trade access and protection of rights. That was the one that got the best vote in Parliament but didn't gain a majority. Theresa May's proposals were roundly defeated on 3 occasions.
So if you do want to see a second referendum in all circumstances, how are you going to campaign in that? You're a man who's been campaigning all your life. Are you going to be campaigning for Leave, or are you going to be campaigning for Remain?
What we said is, in the event of the no-deal Brexit, we'll campaign to Remain.
But what if Labour negotiates a deal?
Well, we've got to get into office first to negotiate a deal.
You see,
and we've got to win an election first. If we win an election, then we'll reopen those talks with the European Union. But at the moment, the danger is a no-deal exit on the 31st of October with all the problems that brings.
I understand that you're opposed to no deal, but where my head starts to hurt slightly is I'm still struggling to see exactly what is in Jeremy Corbyn's heart when it comes to Brexit. I mean, it's crystal clear what Boris Johnson wants, like it or not. It's crystal clear what Jo Swinson wants. What does Jeremy Corbyn want? Do you want to stay in the EU, or do you want to leave?
Investment, jobs, trade and equality. Both in or out of the EU, I want those things. But I go back to the point.
But it makes a difference if you're in or out, doesn't it? You can't just say you want investment and opportunity in or out. I mean,
what we
it matters if we're in
was
or out.
Actually a very credible deal. Bespoke customs union with the EU and the trade arrangements would have achieved those things. It didn't go through Parliament. That's the problem.
So that's your preference then, rather than
that
Remain?
Was what we put forward, and that obviously is why I put it forward. So my issue is also uniting people in the country. My party is the only one that has significant numbers of people who voted both Remain and Leave in the referendum. My party represents people all over the country. We want to bring people together, which is why I spend a lot of time listening to an awful lot of divergent views over this whole issue, and then we came up with the proposal that I put to our national executive and our party, which is what we have.
You say you talk about listening, you talk about trying to unite people, but isn't it also the time for leadership? People want to know what you stand for. Don't you?
Leadership comes from listening. When you listen to people and then you take people forward with you, rather than dictate to them.
We hear a lot about what other people feel, Tom Watson, John McDonnell, Len McCluskey, speculation about people in your office. But this is why I'm saying the leadership question is crucial, isn't it? If you stand up and say, this is what we believe, this is what we're going to do, and people will follow.
We'll push for a referendum and there will be a decision made by the people of this country.
Okay.